And today we're going to do a video and show you how you take a riff and turn it into a song. And we're going to do it with my friend, the amazing Tim Pierce. Tim Pierce is a session musician who's worked with so many artists, it's almost impossible to name all of them. But some of the highlights are Michael Jackson, the Goo Goo Dolls, Phil Collins, Barbra Streisand, and he has an amazing YouTube channel where he teaches you not only how to play guitar, but gives you insights on some of the songs he's done with those artists. So obviously with a resume like his, I thought this would be great to see how he kind of walks through the process and give us some tips on how to do this. So to start the process, I sent him a clip of the riff from my phone, and this is what happened.
I had kind of a tongue twister experience with your riff. It took me about a day to get under my fingers, so it was good. It was a good challenge for me. It was great. The thing is, it comes out of your DNA and your lifetime as a guitar player, and that's often the hardest thing, is to interpret somebody else's kind of lifetime DNA and their riffs. And so it took me, and it's still, I have to chase it.
That's the problem I have. Sometimes there's a hiccup in that little 3-note da-da-da-da,
yeah,
right? Because it jumps, you know, 3 steps.
It does, and it seems like sometimes you think there's just no really not awkward way I can do this. And then when you get it, it's like, okay, yeah, it's easy. The thing I want to stress that really makes it work is I think musicians, guitar players, when they do stuff, they should play along with the drum beat because that settles all of the groove problems. When I heard your thing a cappella, I couldn't quite tell what tempo it was, and I worked on it, but when I actually played it against a drum beat, it was like, oh, that totally makes sense. I see what he's doing. I see what the syncopations are, the upbeats, how it's supposed to move. So that's my one suggestion to everybody. If you want to be a better pocketed rhythm player and you want to make your riffs sound like a record, just grab a drum beat from anywhere. You can grab drum beats off YouTube. You can grab them, you know, they're everywhere. Grab them, collect them, use them. What I did to try and bring this into a different kind of world, I actually got a really good drum loop at 103 BPM, and I decided to play it along with that and double it. So here we go. This is with drums. So the idea is I take a guitar and I pan it hard left and then another one hard right, and that gives you kind of everything you need for a situation like this. Then all of a sudden you're Aerosmith, basically. You've got that sound, hard left and hard, AC/DC, hard left and hard right, you know? So that's what I did, and that leaves the drums in the center. And then the interesting thing for me is with the bass. I tried to double the riff with the bass, and when I did this on the bass, this thing we're talking about, I worked it and worked it and worked it, but it sounded too busy and a little too uneven. And I came up with a solution that worked really well. So I did this on the bass, and that really works great. And that's something I would encourage people to do is keep an open mind, because if you're doubling something, sometimes it's better to simplify the double and then everything kind of settles down, and it was that way with the bass. I'm going to solo the bass for you. Here it comes. So right is classic rock. You can see why it worked so well, you know. And so the riff played over it, it settles down there. Rather than sounding kind of too busy and out of control, everything settles down. So that's a trick. Here we go. By the way, I think every guitar player needs to play bass all the time because they can. Especially, you know, when you make up your own music, it's just so easy to pick up a bass and throw it down. And then the other thing I do, if I'm really going fast, I just turn on my Boss Octaver, and my bass parts happen, you know, on the guitar really quick too, but I usually go back and replace that with the real bass. So here it is. During that little spot where the riff is super, super busy, you just hear muscle from the bass. It's just boom, boom, boom. and it works. So that was my first trick. If you keep working sections and discovering stuff, part of it is not being totally satisfied or waiting until, never kind of giving up on, why does this not sound like a record? You say to yourself, why does this not sound like a record? And you keep working it, and it might just be one little section like that, and it works. And then the only other thing that I did, because it doesn't need much, this particular piece of music functions great with drums, bass, stereo guitars, just like AC/DC. That's the archetype here. I found one part up above that works really well. Now I'm going to solo that for you first, and I'll play it in the track. Let me solo it for you. Now, I made the same discovery here, is when I doubled that up the octave, it was just kind of more of the same. And I found, in the spirit of Aerosmith, if I just played kind of a bluesy riff over that, it worked. So the basic composed part is this. And that's syncopated, so you get some bounce, right? And it's up above, so it stays out of the way of the rhythm guitars. And then rather than double the riff, I just become Joe Perry, and I kind of, it's kind of a narcotic kind of simple blues thing over it. Now I'm going to actually play that live. So you can literally kind of do anything in the answer. It's call and response, which is something I love to do. So that, to me, kind of completes the picture, and it makes your riff sound like a record to me.
I've always seen you, and studio musicians probably, as people who can literally hear something or see something and regurgitate it, but that's not your skill set. Your skill set is you can take the intent or the idea, the raw idea, and turn it into something, right?
Absolutely. People come and they want a dream to come true. And I don't mean to sound grandiose, but maybe they have a track that already has some keyboards and a bass and whatever. And really, in the first 15 minutes, I have to play something that lights up the chorus. And then they're confident. Then they trust me. And then we can make that chorus grow just by adding guitars in different ranges, low guitars, mid guitars, high guitars, whatever, depending on the kind of music it is. And it really is to make their song go like this. So it's essentially the same thing in a way, but what you're doing is you're orchestrating guitar parts, and you want them to take this piece of music that doesn't sound like a record, and you want them to know very quickly that it sounds like a record.
So how do you develop that skill? Because I understand the idea of practicing your scales, learning your chords, learning to read music, that, training your ear. But what you're talking about is a totally different skill set, which is interpreting things.
Well, you have to embrace simplicity, and it's if you're off to an awkward start, find out what the artist likes. If they like Bruno Mars, you can pull a Bruno Mars part, which is basically maybe a Police part. There are lineages for all of these new artists that go back in time. So just because I came from a different era, I can take Bruno Mars and go, oh, I've heard his songs. Some of those things sound like Nile Rodgers. And so I'll go for Nile Rodgers. So that's a start. But once you've done once you've done Nile Rodgers, there's space. There might be space for power chords. You might be able to do Nile Rodgers over this. If I clean it up and I go, that might work over your track. So there might be low power chords to do. Even if they like Bruno Mars, there might be something you can do subliminally down below that's in the rock power range. You just have to discover it.
What's the craziest thing you've ever had to transform into something? Like, has anyone ever brought you like just G, C, and D chords and said, I want a song? Or
well, that's actually the best case scenario, because then I'm free to create. One of the things I wanted to mention a few minutes ago, the thing that musicians miss about this particular craft, it's usually about taking a simple idea and honing it till it gets simpler and simpler. Most musicians are headed the opposite direction. They're trying to do whatever they can to dazzle and flash. But when you're actually creating orchestrations for a song, you start with something simple, and you usually even make it simpler because you're crafting this thing around a vocal and a groove, right? And it's fun to throw out little bursts of complexity, but the approaches are usually very simple. And that's something a lot of musicians miss.
You're right. My brain says, oh, if you want it to be good, more complicated, the better it's got to be.
It's true. Like as a guitar player, people do want you to dazzle them now and then. But for me, I like bursts of complicated stuff. And it's always a yin and yang thing.
Now, is this the part you enjoy the most? Is this creative process that you do when you're in the studio?
Absolutely. Because if you keep the momentum going, and that's another real trick. The reason I'm so surrounded by all this stuff, because even when I was going slow and I had something on, I was able to kick it off right away. So I had to make adjustments midstream just now, but I was able to make those adjustments quickly. Now imagine if I had to get up out of the chair and walk over and grab a pedal and plug it in. The whole momentum of what we're doing would drop. And it's that way in session work. You want to do everything you can to keep the momentum high, and that serves you too. And then you can ask questions later. You just don't second guess stuff. Have all your gear ready to go and move fast. And that's kind of the best case scenario. So it is my favorite part, but it is a performance, and you are on, and you can't really let your guard down. Especially, I always charge by the hour because budgets are smaller these days. And if you don't, people might keep you there for the whole day. So I put pressure on me to actually get things done quickly. But by the end of it, after a 2-hour session, it's fatiguing. 4-hour session, it's more fatiguing. 6-hour session, it's very fatiguing.
I want to thank you, Tim. And for everybody that was watching, please check out Tim's channel. It's amazing. And his masterclass, his lesson program, which is fantastic. I'll make sure there's links down below on the video. And as always, I want to thank him for his time and you guys for your time as well. Until the next time, know your gear.
I'll try. Well, Phil, you are the master of gear. I've learned so much from your channel, and it's really kind of a pleasure to do a collaboration with you. Really, really great.